The evening sky was a canvas of deep indigo and violet, the city lights of Charlotte, North Carolina, flickering to life as the sun sank below the horizon. Inside a spacious suburban home, Laura Bennett sat in her elegantly furnished living room, the soft glow of a tablet illuminating her face. The distant murmur of a news channel played on the television, a comforting hum against the stillness of the house. At 42, Laura was a striking woman. Her auburn hair swept into a loose bun, her figure still trim from years of yoga and careful attention to herself. Yet there was a restlessness in her eyes, a quiet yearning that lingered beneath her poised exterior. She glanced at the clock on the mantel. 10:30 p.m. The house was unusually quiet, save for the occasional creak of the floorboards or the faint sound of music drifting from upstairs. Her stepson Ethan hadn't emerged from his room since dinner, and curiosity tugged at her. Ethan, now 24, was a recent college graduate, back home temporarily while he figured out his next steps. He was no longer the lanky teenager she'd known when she married his father Richard 8 years ago. Time had sculpted him into a man, tall, broad-shouldered, with a quiet intensity that unsettled her in ways she didn't dare examine too closely. Rising from the plush sofa, Laura smoothed her silk blouse and padded down the hallway, her bare feet silent on the polished oak floor. Ethan's door was slightly ajar, a sliver of warm light spilling into the dim corridor. She hesitated, her hand hovering near the doorframe, a flutter of nerves tightening her chest. Then, with a soft breath, she pushed the door open. The sight stopped her cold. Ethan sat on his bed, his back propped against the headboard, a laptop balanced on his knees. The screen's glow cast sharp shadows across his face, and Laura's breath caught as she registered what he was watching: an adult film, explicit and unapologetic. His hand moved beneath the thin blanket draped over his lap, his expression a mix of focus and furtive guilt. Her heart pounded, a rush of heat flooding her cheeks. "Ethan," she said, her voice soft but piercing in the heavy silence. He jolted his head, whipping toward her, eyes wide with panic. The laptop snapped shut with a clumsy thud, his face flushing a deep crimson. "Laura, I didn't hear you," he stammered, yanking the blanket higher as if it could erase what she'd seen. Laura stepped into the room, closing the door behind her with a gentle click. She crossed her arms, leaning against the wall, her expression calm but laced with curiosity. "What are you doing?" she asked, though the answer hung in the air like a charged current. Ethan's gaze dropped to the floor, his fingers twisting the edge of the blanket. I was just..." His voice faltered, unable to form a defense. "It's okay," Laura interrupted, her tone surprisingly gentle. "You don't have to explain. I know what you were doing." The room fell silent, the air thick with unspoken tension. Ethan's shoulders hunched, his embarrassment palpable, but Laura's presence was steady, almost reassuring. She studied him for a moment, her eyes softening as she took in his discomfort. Then, with a graceful movement, she crossed the room and sat on the edge of the bed, her silk skirt shifting slightly to reveal a glimpse of her thigh. "Ethan, do you want to talk about it?" she asked, her voice low and inviting. He hesitated, his mind racing. The weight of her gaze made denial impossible. "I'm just nervous," he admitted, his voice barely audible. "About Mia. We've been together for a few months and she wants to take things further. But I don't know what I'm doing. I'm terrified I'll screw it up." Laura nodded, her expression thoughtful. She reached out, placing a reassuring hand on his shoulder, her touch warm through his thin t-shirt. "That's completely normal, Ethan. Everyone feels nervous their first time. It's a big step and it's okay to be unsure." His eyes met hers, a mix of gratitude and desperation flickering in them. "But what if I'm awful at it? What if she's disappointed?" Laura's lips curved into a soft smile, and she squeezed his shoulder gently. "You're overthinking it. Just be yourself. Talk to her. Listen to her, and don't rush. It's not about perfection, it's about connection." Her words were soothing, But Ethan's doubt lingered. His brow furrowed. "I just wish I knew what to expect," he murmured, running a hand through his dark hair. "I don't want to let her down." Laura's heart ached for him, but beneath her empathy, a spark of something else flickered, something daring forbidden. She stood, her movements fluid, and leaned against the wall again, her eyes never leaving his. "You'll figure it out," she said, her voice steady. "Trust yourself." She left the room, closing the door softly behind her, and paused in the hallway, her pulse racing. The image of Ethan's flushed face, his vulnerability, burned in her mind. She returned to the living room, sinking onto the sofa, her thoughts a tangled dance of concern and curiosity. How could she help him? What could she do to ease his fears? The questions gnawed at her, igniting a restless energy she couldn't shake. In the days that followed, an unspoken tension simmered between them. Ethan's confession lingered like a shadow, his anxiety palpable in the way he fidgeted at meals or avoided her gaze. Laura, a retired interior designer who now volunteered at a local art gallery, had always been close to Ethan, navigating the delicate balance of stepmother and friend. But now, faced with his insecurities, she felt an overwhelming urge to guide him, even if it meant crossing boundaries she'd never dared to approach. One humid evening, as she chopped vegetables in the kitchen, her mind wandered. Ethan lounged in the living room, scrolling through his phone, his leg bouncing restlessly. Laura set down her knife, wiped her hands on a towel, and walked to the doorway. "Ethan," she said softly, her voice cutting through the quiet. He looked up, startled. "Yeah, you've been quiet lately. Everything okay?" She leaned against the doorframe, her fitted blouse accentuating her curves. Ethan shrugged, his eyes flickering away. "I'm fine, just thinking." She stepped closer, sitting beside him on the couch, her perfume a subtle blend of jasmine and vanilla, filling the space between them. "Is this about Mia?" "About what we talked about," she asked, her hand resting lightly on his shoulder. He nodded, his jaw tightening. "Yeah, I can't stop worrying about it. It's driving me crazy." Laura's heart twisted. She wanted to erase his fears, to give him the confidence he craved. "You can't let it consume you," she said, her voice gentle but firm. "You'll figure it out when the time comes." Ethan's eyes met hers, raw with uncertainty. "I wish I could believe that." That night, as Laura lay in bed, her thoughts churned. Words alone weren't enough. She needed to act, to guide him in a way that went beyond advice. By morning, a bold plan took shape, one that thrilled and terrified her. She would start subtly testing the waters, drawing him out of his shell. Over the next few days, Laura's behavior shifted. She traded her usual casual attire for more provocative choices, tight sweaters that hugged her curved skirts, that teased the tops of her thighs, and silky robes that slipped open just enough to hint at what lay beneath. One morning, she left the bathroom door ajar, while showering the steam, curling into the hallway, her silhouette faintly visible through the frosted glass. Ethan, passing by, froze his gaze, lingering before he hurried away, his face flushed. Another evening, as they passed in the hallway, Laura wore a fitted black dress that clung to her hips, the hem daringly short. She caught the way Ethan's eyes darted to her legs, his breath hitching before he looked away. She even accidentally sent him a link to an adult film, claiming it was meant for a friend. When the notification pinged on his phone, his fingers fumbled his cheeks, burning as he stammered an excuse. Each interaction left Ethan flustered, his attraction undeniable, yet laced with confusion. Laura watched him closely, her heart pounding with a mix of guilt and exhilaration. Her plan was working slowly, dismantling the barriers between them, creating a space where she could guide him in ways that felt both natural and dangerously intimate. By week's end, Laura knew it was time to escalate. She sat at the dinner table, her mind made up, her resolve stealing, as she watched Ethan poke at his food, lost in thought. Tonight, she would take the next step, a move that would redefine their relationship forever. "Ethan," she said, her voice cutting through the silence, "how about dinner out tomorrow night, just you and me? There's a new French restaurant downtown I've been dying to try." Ethan's fork paused, mid-air. his eyes widening. Like a date. Laura smiled, her tone casual but deliberate. Sure, why not? We haven't spent much time together lately. It'll be fun. He hesitated, then nodded, a mix of nerves and intrigue in his expression. Okay. Sure. The next evening, Laura prepared with meticulous care. She chose a deep emerald dress that hugged her curves, the neckline plunging just enough to be provocative, the hem flaring mid-thigh. She paired it with strappy heels and a delicate silver necklace that rested teasingly above her cleavage. Her makeup was bold, smoky eyes, crimson lips, her hair cascading in loose waves. When she descended the stairs, Ethan, dressed in a crisp button-up and slacks, froze, his jaw slackening. You look incredible, he managed, his voice hoarse. Thank you. Laura purred, her smile radiant. Let's go. The drive to the restaurant was charged with tension, the air thick with unspoken words. At the restaurant, a dimly lit bistro with velvet curtains and candle-lit tables, they were seated in a secluded corner. Laura crossed her legs slowly, her dress riding up to reveal a tantalizing glimpse of her thigh. She noticed Ethan's gaze linger, his cheeks flushing as he quickly looked away. Their conversation started light, his job search, her gallery work. But Laura subtly shifted the dynamic. She leaned forward, her cleavage accentuated, and brushed her foot against his leg under the table, a fleeting but deliberate touch. Ethan stiffened, his eyes meeting hers, a spark of arousal flickering in them. I'm here for you, Ethan, she said softly, her voice a velvet caress. Whatever you're going through, you can tell me. He nodded, his breath uneven. I know. It's just hard to talk about. Laura reached across the table, her hand covering his, her touch electric. You don't have to go through it alone. Before he could respond, she stood smoothing her dress. Excuse me for a moment, she said, her eyes holding his. In the restroom, Laura steadied her racing heart. She reached under her dress, slipping off her lace panties, folding them neatly into her clutch. Returning to the table, she slid them across to Ethan, her voice low and intimate. Keep these, she whispered, her gaze locking with his. They're yours now. Ethan stared at the delicate fabric, his face a blaze of red, his mouth opening, but no words emerging. Laura sipped her wine, her composure unshaken, her heart racing with the thrill of the moment. The waiter brought the check, and Laura paid with a graceful flourish, her eyes never leaving Ethan's. Ready to go, she asked, her tone a sultry promise. He nodded, stuffing the panties into his pocket, his movements jerky. They left the restaurant, the cool night air, a sharp contrast to the heat between them. In the car, Laura's movements were deliberate, uncrossing and recrossing her legs, her dress inching higher, revealing the smooth expanse of her thigh. Ethan's hands gripped the wheel, his knuckles white, his breathing shallow. You're quiet, she teased, her fingers brushing his thigh, a feather-light touch that sent a shiver through him. Just thinking, he managed, his voice strained. The drive home was a silent battle of restraint and desire. When they pulled into the driveway, Ethan cut the engine, his hands still clutching the wheel. Laura unbuckled her seatbelt and turned to him, her expression soft but resolute. Thank you for tonight, she said, her voice warm. I had a wonderful time. Me too, he mumbled, avoiding her gaze. She reached over, tilting his chin to meet her eyes. You don't have to be afraid, Ethan. I'm here for you. Leaning in, she pressed a soft kiss to his cheek, her lips lingering a moment too long. Let's go inside, she said, stepping out of the car, her heels clicking against the pavement. Inside, the house felt alive with possibility. Laura set her clutch on the entryway table and turned to Ethan, her eyes gleaming. Why don't we sit for a bit? She suggested, her voice a seductive invitation. We can talk. Ethan nodded, his heart pounding. He followed her to the living room, where she paused at the bar cart, holding up a bottle of bourbon. Want one? She asked, her tone playful. Sure, he said, his voice rough. Laura bent over deliberately to pour the drinks, her dress riding up, offering a fleeting glimpse of her bare skin. Ethan's breath caught his face burning as he averted his eyes. She handed him a glass, their fingers brushing, and sat beside him on the couch. Her legs crossed her dress, teasingly high. Patting the space next to her, she locked eyes with him. "Sit closer," she murmured. He obeyed, leaving a small gap, his hands fidgeting with his glass. Laura leaned forward, her hand resting on his thigh, her touch igniting a fire within him. "Look at me," she said softly. Ethan turned his eyes wide, with a mix of fear and desire. She placed her hand over his, her touch grounding. "You don't have to be scared," she whispered. "I'm here." "I don't know what to say." He admitted, his voice trembling. "You don't have to say anything," Laura replied, shifting closer, her leg brushing his. The heat of her body was intoxicating, her perfume enveloping him. She uncrossed her legs, the movement slow and deliberate, her dress revealing a tantalizing glimpse of her skin. Leaning in, her lips grazed his ear. "Do you trust me?" "Yes," he whispered, his body trembling. Laura smiled, her lips brushing his cheek as she pulled back. Her hand moved to his thigh, her touch bolder now. Then, without warning, she kissed him, a slow, deliberate kiss that sent a jolt through his entire being. Ethan froze, shock warring with desire, but then he melted into her, his hands tentatively reaching for her waist. Her lips were soft, warm, a promise of forbidden pleasure. The kiss deepened Laura, guiding him with confidence, her hands moving to his shoulders, pulling him closer. Ethan's moan was soft, a surrender to the moment. She pulled back, her breath mingling with his. "Follow my lead," she whispered, guiding his hands to her hips, then up her sides, teaching him to touch her with intent. His fingers trembled, tracing the curves of her dress, feeling the heat of her skin beneath. Laura's hands brushed his neck, her lips finding his again, the kiss hungry now, a dance of desire and restraint. Ethan's hands grew bolder, exploring her body, his heart racing as he lost himself in her. After a while, she pulled back her lips, grazing his cheek. "Just a moment," she murmured, standing and gliding toward the hallway, her hips swaying with promise. Ethan sat, his hands shaking, the warmth of her lips lingering. When Laura returned, the sight stole his breath. She stood in the doorway, clad in a sheer black lace chemise, the fabric clinging to her curves, leaving little to the imagination. Her confidence was magnetic, her eyes locked on his. "Do you like what you see?" she asked, her voice a sultry tease. Ethan's throat tightened, words failing him. His eyes devoured her, his hands clenching the couch. "Yes," he managed, his voice a hoarse whisper. Laura's smile was wicked, and she leaned down, her lips brushing his ear. "Good." She stepped back, her gaze commanding. "Patience," she said, her tone firm yet playful, as his hands reached for her. Turning, she walked toward the hallway, glancing over her shoulder. "Come with me," she said, her voice a siren's call. Ethan followed his heart, a wild drumbeat, the night unfolding into a forbidden dance neither could resist. Ethan's pulse thundered as he followed Laura down the hallway, her black lace chemise a vision that seared itself into his mind. Each step she took was a deliberate seduction, the soft sway of her hips, a rhythm that matched the frantic beating of his heart. The house was silent, the air thick with anticipation as they reached her bedroom. Laura paused in the doorway, her silhouette framed by the warm glow of a bedside lamp, her arms crossed loosely, accentuating the delicate curves beneath the lace. She turned, her eyes locking with his, a slow, knowing smile curving her lips. "Come in," she murmured, stepping aside with a graceful gesture. Ethan hesitated, his feet heavy, as if crossing the threshold would commit him to something irrevocable. The room beckoned, intimate, warm-scented, with Laura's jasmine perfume. The bed, draped in soft linens, glowed under the lamp's golden light, an invitation he both craved and feared. Taking a shaky breath, he stepped inside, his eyes scanning the space, every detail, heightening his awareness of what was unfolding. Laura closed the door with a soft click, the sound final sealing them in this private world. She approached him, her hands resting on his chest, her fingers splaying over his racing heart. "Are you nervous?" she asked, her voice a velvet caress, probing yet gentle. "A little." Ethan admitted his throat dry, his gaze flickering to the floor. Her smile was warm, reassuring. She brushed her thumb against his cheek, tilting his face to meet her eyes. "That's okay. We'll take it slow." Leaning in, she kissed him, her lips soft and deliberate, a promise of patience and passion. Ethan's tension eased, his hands moving to her waist, trembling as they grazed the delicate lace. The kiss deepened a slow exploration, and he felt himself surrender to her lead. Pulling back, Laura's breath mingled with his. "Trust me," she whispered, taking his hand and guiding him to the bed. With a gentle push, she eased him onto the mattress, climbing atop him, straddling his waist. Her hands rested on his chest, her fingers teasing the buttons of his shirt. "Let me show you," she murmured, her voice intimate, a sultry promise. Ethan's hands trembled as they settled on her hips, his breath hitching as she leaned down to kiss him again. Her lips were fire, her confidence a beacon guiding him through uncharted waters. She was patient, encouraging, teaching him with every touch. "Like this," she whispered, guiding his hand to the small of her back, her skin warm and smooth beneath the lace. He followed, his fingers tracing her curves, his heart pounding as her body pressed closer. Laura's lips found his neck, her kisses slow and deliberate, igniting sparks across his skin. Her hands roamed his shoulders, unbuttoning his shirt with practiced ease, her fingers brushing his bare chest. Ethan's breath caught his hands, growing bolder, exploring the contours of her body, the lace a tantalizing barrier. The night unfolded in a blur of sensations, her whispered guidance, the heat of her skin, the rhythm of their shared breaths. Hours later they lay entwined, the room quiet, save for their slowing breaths. Laura's head rested on Ethan's chest, her fingers tracing lazy patterns on his skin. "You were incredible," she whispered, her voice warm with pride. Ethan smiled, his hand resting on her back. "You taught me well," he murmured, exhaustion and awe in his voice. Laura chuckled, the sound low and melodic. "Get some rest," she said, her tone soothing. Ethan pulled her closer, their bodies molding together, as sleep claimed them. The world outside fading away. Morning light filtered through the curtains, casting a golden glow over the room. Ethan woke first, the weight of the night settling over him. Laura slept beside him, her arm draped across his waist, her breathing steady. His fingers traced idle patterns on her back as he grappled with the reality of what they'd done. It was exhilarating, transformative, but laced with guilt. Mia's face flashed in his mind, and the life he'd planned with her felt distant, overshadowed by the intensity of this moment. Laura stirred, her eyes fluttering open. She smiled, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "Good morning," she said, her voice husky. "Morning," Ethan replied, his voice soft, uncertain. She studied him, sensing his turmoil. "You okay?" she asked, propping herself on her elbow, her hand resting on his chest. "I don't know," he admitted, his gaze dropping. "Last night was amazing, but I don't know what this means. For me, for Mia, for us." Laura nodded, her expression understanding. "It's okay to feel conflicted. This was a big step. You don't have to have all the answers now. Just take it one day at a time." He met her eyes, searching for clarity. She leaned in, kissing him softly, a tender reassurance. "Let's just enjoy this moment," she said, her voice firm yet gentle. They lay together, the quiet intimacy a balm to his racing thoughts. Eventually Laura slipped from the bed, tying a silk robe loosely around her waist. "I'm starving." "Breakfast?" she asked, her smile warm. "Sure," Ethan said, his stomach knotting with nerves. He followed her to the kitchen, the normalcy of the setting jarring after the night's intensity. Laura moved with ease, cracking eggs, toasting bread, her conversation light stories of her gallery work, questions about his favorite foods. Her calm demeanor eased his tension, and he found himself relaxing, if only slightly. They ate at the kitchen table, Sunlight streaming through the window, the meal a quiet anchor. When they finished, Laura leaned back, her expression turning serious. "We need to talk," she said, her tone gentle but resolute. Ethan nodded, bracing himself. She reached for his hand, her touch grounding. "I know this is complicated," she said, her voice low. "I don't regret last night, and I hope you don't either. But I understand you're figuring things out with Mia, with yourself." "I don't regret it," Ethan said quietly. "But I don't know what this means for us, or for her." Laura's thumb brushed his hand. "I'm not asking you to decide now. This is your journey, Ethan. I'm here to support you, whatever that looks like." He swallowed hard, gratitude and confusion swirling within him. "What do you want?" he asked, his voice barely audible. "I want you to be confident, happy," she said, her eyes sincere. "I want to be part of your life, but not to complicate it. We'll navigate this together." They talked for hours, the conversation weaving through their fears, desires, and the fragile connection they'd forged. As they cleared the table, Laura glanced at him, her smile warm. "Whatever happens, we'll figure it out," she said, her voice a promise. Days turned into weeks, and the dynamic between them shifted. Laura remained a steady presence, encouraging Ethan to confront his feelings for Mia while grappling with her own desires. She attended therapy, seeking clarity about her marriage to Richard, who remained distant, consumed by his corporate law career. Ethan, meanwhile, wrestled with his commitment to Mia, the night with Laura, a catalyst for questioning what he truly wanted. One evening, Laura invited Ethan for a walk, the autumn air crisp, the streets lined with golden leaves. They stopped by a quiet park, the world still around them. "I've been thinking," she said, her voice steady, "about us, about what we've done. I care about you, Ethan, but I need to focus on myself, my marriage, my happiness." Ethan nodded, a weight lifting yet leaving an ache. "I care about you too, but I need to figure out things with Mia. I owe her that." Laura smiled, her eyes glistening. "You're stronger than you know. You'll be okay." They parted with a lingering embrace, the connection between them undeniable but no longer a consuming flame. Laura returned home facing Richard with newfound resolve, determined to rebuild or redefine their life together. Ethan, meanwhile, reached out to Mia, honest about his uncertainties, seeking a path forward with clarity. Their story wasn't one of betrayal or destruction, but of awakening. Laura and Ethan, bound by a fleeting, forbidden intimacy, found themselves not in each other, but in the courage to confront their truths, to choose healing over chaos, and to step boldly into the lives they were meant to live.